Before your next grocery run, watch this carefully. 13 grocery essentials that millions of American families buy every single week are all heading higher before July 1st, 2026. Not because of one crisis, because multiple forces, tariffs, extreme weather, supply chain bottlenecks, and rising energy costs are colliding at the exact same time. The timing matters more than most people realize. For each item on this list, you will get the full picture. What is driving the increases? Why these pressures are structural and not temporary? And the smartest, lowest effort moves you can make today to protect your budget. Number 7 is one of the most overlooked grocery categories in America right now. Most shoppers will never see it coming. Keep watching for that one. Let's get into it. Number 13, flour. Most people don't think much about flour until the bag runs out. It sits quietly in the pantry for months at a time. But flour is directly connected to a global wheat market that has become increasingly unstable over the past several years. Weather disruptions across major wheat-producing regions have reduced yields in multiple countries. Transportation and fuel costs remain elevated compared to historical averages. Every loaf of bread, every batch of cookies, every homemade pizza crust starts with wheat. When wheat prices rise, the effect doesn't stay in one aisle. It spreads across a huge portion of the store. Flour often acts as an early indicator of what's coming. Manufacturers can sometimes delay price increases on finished products by reducing margins or tightening supply contracts, but eventually those higher costs move through the chain. A 10-pound bag of flour stored in an airtight container can remain usable for many months. That makes it one of the simplest and lowest-risk pantry purchases available right now. No panic buying, no filling your garage, just picking up an extra bag or two before prices move higher later this summer. When the cost of wheat rises, flour is rarely the last product affected. It is usually one of the first. Number 12. Avocados and Mexican produce. Most people still think of avocados as an occasional treat, but that framing misses how exposed this entire category is right now. Mexico supplies roughly 69% of U.S. vegetable imports and more than half of fresh fruit imports. That covers avocados, bell peppers, limes, cucumbers, tomatoes, mangoes, and much of the produce aisle you rely on every week. Tariffs of up to 25% on Mexican goods have created real strain. While some carve-outs exist, the overall trade relationship remains unstable and unpredictable. The result at shelf level? An avocado that used to stay under $1 now bounces between $1.50 and $2 or more depending on the week. That volatility is harder to budget around than a steady increase. For items with a short shelf life, traditional bulk buying doesn't apply. But when you hit a good price week, pick up extras, mash or slice the flesh, and freeze in portioned containers. Perfect for smoothies and guacamole later. The tariff situation with Mexico has not stabilized, and fresh produce is where most families feel trade policy changes first and hardest. Number 11. Peanut butter and nut butters. This one sounds too ordinary to make a list like this. That is exactly why it belongs here. Peanut butter has been a rock-solid staple in American pantries for generations, the item people grab without checking the price. That habit is about to get quietly more expensive. You don't usually see sudden spikes. Instead, the jar that cost $2.99 becomes $3.29, then $3.59, then $3.99. The increases feel small individually, but they compound. As beef prices climb significantly, households naturally shift protein spending toward cheaper alternatives, eggs, beans, and peanut butter. Demand is rising exactly when higher energy and fuel costs are pushing up processing and distribution expenses across the board. Rising demand plus rising costs is the combination that breaks long-term price stability in any category. An unopened jar holds for 12 to 18 months in a cool pantry. Buying 2 or 3 extra jars on your next trip is one of the lowest cost, lowest effort protections on this entire list. You will buy these jars eventually. The only question is what price you'll pay. Number 10. Frozen vegetables. Here's the item that directly challenges what most smart shoppers are already planning to do. Fresh produce gets more expensive, so you switch to frozen. That is a logical instinct. The problem is timing. Frozen vegetable prices have not yet fully absorbed the cost pressures already moving through the system. Crude oil at elevated levels affects every stage. Refrigerated harvesting equipment in the field, energy-heavy flash freezing at processing plants, long-haul refrigerated trucking, and frozen warehouse storage. Every link in that cold chain is getting more expensive, and there is a built-in 3 to 6 month lag before those costs appear on the bag. Right now, we are inside that window. Frozen broccoli, spinach, mixed vegetables, and corn are still relatively reasonable. That window is closing. Adding 1 extra bag per shopping trip costs almost nothing today. These items keep for 12 to 18 months in a good freezer. Building that buffer now means your backup plan won't cost nearly as much by late summer when the full pressure finally lands on the freezer aisle. Number 9. Pasta and dry grains. The numbers here are sobering, and most shoppers have no idea. The base tariff on many European food imports sits at 15%. On top of that, anti-dumping duties exceeding 90% have been applied to major Italian pasta exporters. Combined, that is well over 100% tariff impact on a significant portion of imported pasta. The cost to reach the US shelf could more than double. Retailers cannot absorb that kind of pressure indefinitely. When premium imported pasta jumps in price, shoppers flood toward domestic and store brand options, creating secondary pressure across the entire category. Expensive options move first. Budget options follow later. Rice, dried lentils, beans, quinoa, and other shelf-stable grains face the same global shipping costs and tariff uncertainty. Sealed properly, pasta and rice last 2 to 5 years or more. Buying ahead on items you already eat regularly is about as close to a guaranteed budget win as grocery shopping gets. Number 8. Canned fish and seafood. And here is the one most people walk right past without a second look. Canned tuna, salmon, sardines, and mackerel have quietly played a crucial role in household budgets for decades. They were the reliable proteins that stayed steady while beef climbed and chicken fluctuated. Most shoppers never even checked the price. That invisibility is exactly why this category deserves your attention right now. A 15% tariff now applies to Norwegian salmon. 10% tariffs are hitting imports from Chile and Canada. Those 3 countries supply the vast majority of the farmed Atlantic salmon Americans actually consume. The tariffs hit the seafood counter and flow directly into how processors price canned products. So far, shelf increases have been modest, not dramatic enough to grab attention at checkout. That is because processors have been absorbing costs on the back end to keep shelf prices stable. They cannot sustain that strategy indefinitely as tariffs become permanent. When absorption ends, prices don't creep gradually. They reset. Canned fish holds for 3 to 5 years with no refrigeration needed. Buying a case of tuna or salmon today isn't extreme stockpiling. It is simply purchasing what your household will use anyway, before the quiet reset most people won't see coming until it has fully landed. Number 7. Coffee. Let me be completely direct on this one. This is the category I told you to remember. Coffee is not just another grocery item. For many households, it is a daily necessity that doesn't get cut, even when budgets get tight. Prices are already up close to 20% compared to a year ago. The forces driving that number have not gone away. Brazil and Vietnam together dominate global coffee production, supplying the majority of what the world drinks. Both countries have endured consecutive years of drought, erratic rainfall, and extreme heat events that severely damaged yields. Here's the detail most coverage glosses over. You cannot fix a coffee harvest in a single season. Coffee trees take years to reach full productive maturity. A young replacement plant does not simply restore supply within 12 months. When growing conditions fail, the supply pipeline takes multiple seasons to recover, and only if the weather finally cooperates. It has not been cooperating. Meanwhile, American coffee consumption remains steady or even higher for many households. The U.S. imports essentially all of its coffee. Domestic production is negligible. Tariffs applied to Brazilian agricultural goods added direct cost layers on top of a base price that had already ratcheted upward. The market absorbed one shock and had not recovered before the next arrived. Analysts tracking commodity markets are projecting another wave of increases in the fourth quarter of this year. Whole beans stored in a sealed bag in a cool, dry spot stay fresh for several months. Many people extend that window significantly by freezing them in airtight containers. The trajectory is pointing in one direction. Buying a little ahead is simple math. Lock in today's prices on something your household uses daily before the next leg up fully materializes. Number 6. Breakfast cereals. Cereal may seem like a simple product. Look closer. Most cereals rely heavily on grains such as corn, wheat, oats, or rice, which means they inherit many of the same supply challenges already discussed. Weather disruptions, transportation costs, energy prices, all of it eventually flows into the cereal aisle, then add packaging. Cereal manufacturers depend heavily on cardboard production and distribution networks. When packaging costs rise, consumers eventually feel it, either through higher prices or through smaller boxes at the same price. What makes cereal especially easy to miss is how quietly these changes happen. Most people don't memorize cereal prices. They simply notice one day that the box feels lighter, or costs a little more, then a little more again. Many cereals remain shelf-stable for months, which makes this category practical to buy ahead during sales or promotions. The next time you see your usual brand on sale, grab more than one box. The savings compound quietly over the months ahead. Number 5, tomato products. Fresh tomato prices have grabbed headlines, but the bigger impact for most households is happening in the middle aisles. Canned tomatoes, tomato paste, crushed tomatoes, and jarred pasta sauces form the backbone of countless weeknight meals. Every one of them is heading higher. Mexico supplies roughly 70% of fresh tomatoes consumed in the United States, and an 18% tariff is now in effect. At the same time, Florida, the largest domestic supplier, suffered significant crop damage from winter freezes and storms. Domestic supply dropped right when import costs rose. The pressure on canned products travels through processing channels on a delay. Higher raw commodity costs combined with elevated fuel prices for transportation mean the facilities that process and store these products face rising expenses from multiple directions. Eventually, those costs reach the label on the shelf. Canned tomatoes and sauces hold for about 2 years. Stocking up now locks in today's prices on items you will absolutely use long before the best buy date. You are going to buy these regardless. The only real question is what price you'll pay when you do. Number 4. Cooking oils. The entire cooking oil aisle is under pressure that has not received nearly enough attention. Start with sunflower oil. The ongoing situation in Ukraine, one of the world's largest producers, has kept global sunflower seed supply below pre-conflict levels for over 2 years. That gap remains priced into the market. Canola oil comes heavily from Canada, and new tariff friction in the U.S.-Canada trade relationship is affecting agricultural exports. Because many cooking oils compete with one another, shortages or higher prices in one category push consumers into another, creating a domino effect across the entire aisle. Here is what most shoppers miss. Retailers keep the largest format bottles competitively priced because consumers use them as anchor reference points. Meanwhile, medium-sized bottles quietly absorb increases first. If your household goes through cooking oil regularly, switching to the larger format and buying ahead right now locks in a better per-unit price. Vegetable oil and canola keep well for a year or more in a cool, dark spot. Do it before the next round of cost increases fully arrives. Number 3. Olive oil. The more closely you examine olive oil, the clearer it becomes. This is not a single problem. It is multiple converging pressures hitting the same product from entirely different directions. The United States imports over 98% of its olive oil. California covers just 1 to 2% of national demand. That means American supply depends almost entirely on Spain, Italy, and Greece. Spain, the world's largest producer, has faced consecutive years of severe drought that slashed harvests. Italy and Greece dealt with their own weather challenges. Global supply has stayed genuinely tight for more than a year, driving wholesale prices higher. Then add a 15% tariff on European food imports landing directly on olive oil. Importers have stated that a bottle retailing at $10 could reach $15 or more once the full impact moves through the chain. That is a potential 50% increase on a kitchen staple millions of households use daily. Retailers have been absorbing part of these costs on their margins to avoid alarming shoppers. The shelf price you see today has not yet fully reflected true import costs. That gap always closes, and it is closing now. Olive oil stored in a cool, dark cabinet holds for 12 to 18 months. Buying 2 or 3 bottles today instead of 1 is one of the clearest calls on this list. You will buy it eventually. The only variable is the price you pay. Number 2. Ground beef. Few products affect household food budgets more directly, and few categories are facing as much structural pressure right now. The USDA is reporting beef prices running nearly 15% higher than this time last year. This is not seasonal fluctuation. It is a structural shift with deep roots. Years of severe drought in core ranching states forced producers to liquidate cattle they couldn't afford to feed or water. Once you sell off breeding stock, you cannot rebuild a herd overnight. Rebuilding takes years of careful breeding cycles, consistent rainfall, and time. The USDA's own long-term outlook points to meaningful recovery no earlier than 2027. Then came a separate blow. A screwworm outbreak in mid-2025 effectively shut down live cattle imports from Mexico, over 1 million head per year that the U.S. had relied on. That supply line is now close to zero. Depleted domestic herd plus closed imports equals significantly less supply against steady demand. There is only one direction for prices from here. If your household has a chest freezer, treat it like a financial tool right now. Buy ground beef in bulk when you catch a strong sale. Portion it into meal-size bags and freeze. The price you lock in today will look like a bargain by fall when demand peaks on top of already tight supply. Number 1. Canned beans, broth, and stock. This earns the top spot, not because it is the most dramatic item, but because acting on it right now is the easiest and smartest decision you will make today. Chicken broth, beef stock, vegetable broth, canned black beans, pinto beans, kidney beans, chickpeas, and lentils. These products quietly support millions of meals every week. Soups, stews, rice dishes, casseroles, slow cooker meals, and budget meals. Nobody talks about them much, yet every single one is heading higher. These items follow underlying commodity costs directly. When beef is up 15%, beef-based stocks follow. When chicken supply tightens from feed and energy costs, chicken broth pricing reflects it. Canned beans face the same dual pressure hitting most shelf-stable foods. Elevated transportation and fuel costs combined with rising demand as more households shift toward affordable plant-based protein when meat prices climb. Here is what makes this category unique. The shelf life. Canned beans remain usable safely for 3 to 5 years. Boxed or canned broth and stock last 12 to 24 months or more. There is no urgency, no complexity, and virtually zero downside to picking up extras on your next trip. Grab the large cans. Build up the bottom shelf of your pantry. Buy the formats your family already uses every week. This is the most straightforward form of budget protection available in any grocery store right now. Now pull back and look at all 13 together. These are not 13 separate problems landing randomly across different aisles. They are one larger challenge showing up in 13 different places. Energy prices remain elevated due to ongoing geopolitical tensions, and energy touches every single step of producing, transporting, processing, and storing food. Cattle and poultry supply chains are still recovering from years of drought and disease that cannot be fixed quickly. Coffee, olive oil, and produce supplies remain tight because of sustained weather damage in key growing regions that takes multiple seasons to reverse. Tariffs on Mexican goods, European imports, and Canadian agriculture have layered additional costs on top of already strained systems. All of these forces are hitting at the same time. The USDA's forecasts point to grocery inflation running at or above the 20-year historical average this year. Independent estimates put the added annual cost from tariff-related and supply pressures alone at well over $2,500 per household for many families. That is real money leaving your budget. The households that will feel this the least are the ones who move with intention right now. Before July 1st, before peak summer demand adds another layer of pressure, and before retailers finish absorbing what they can and pass the full costs along. You do not need to panic buy or clear entire shelves. This is about shopping a little more deliberately than usual over the next several weeks. Use your freezer as a financial buffer, not just an appliance. Prioritize items with the longest shelf lives. Shift toward bulk sizes on categories where prices are clearly trending upward. Pay attention to supply chain signals before they show up as higher tags at checkout. Most people will wait until September or October when the new prices are fully locked in and the only option left is to pay them. You have the chance to get ahead of that curve while there is still room to act. Take care of your household. Protect your budget with small, consistent moves. These 13 items are things you are already buying anyway. The only question is whether you pay today's prices or tomorrow's higher ones. Which of these 13 essentials are you going to start with this week? Drop your answer in the comments. If this breakdown helped you see the bigger picture, a like helps it reach more families who need this information before July arrives. Stay ahead out there.